again, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Amy, and I'm glad you decided to join me for this exciting book video. Today, I am going to be reading Chapter 2 of the book that I wrote, Legends, Orbs of the Elements. Again, like the first chapter, I will be leaving all the fun information to purchase the book if you are interested after the end of this video. So stay tuned for that. And let's begin Chapter 2. Chapter 2. The next day, Castilia woke late in the morning. She got up and saw the provisions that Jacob had packed the night before. She dug around until she felt a slightly hard pear and took a bite. The juices ran down her chin as she ate and prepared her horse for travel. Castilia was going to toss the fruit away when the horse let out a call as if to say, "What about me?" She smiled and fed the animal. She packed a side saddle backpack across her horse and was on her way. Castilia kept a steady pace. It was half a day's ride to the western plains. Castilia made good time. The sun was high in the sky as she entered the western plains. She kept her eyes alert. People that lived here were common. This meant they were also known as ungifted, or people with no magical abilities. Castilia sometimes wished she was common, but she was not. Castilia had a good sense of things, but she didn't know where to go next. She began to search for anything that might help. The horse she was riding seemed to have a good idea where he was going. He trotted off towards a trail that led to a small group of trees that they had just passed. She knew better than to try to get the animal to move in the direction she wanted. As she rode further into the woods, she, in her mind, could hear the old legends calling to her. She followed. Soon she saw a portal to the sanctuary. Castilia entered. Once she rode through the portal, she felt and could see that she had stepped into a wonderful place. Everything was in bloom and had a fresh spring-like smell in the air. She got off her horse. A legend in gray long robes approached her. "Ah, Castilia, my little one, you have arrived safely." She breathed out a sigh of relief. Jacob had been here. Little One was his pet name for her. Legend, I have come to the western plains like you have asked. Now, where am I to go? The old legend took her hand and led her to a table. Many other legends sat at the table, waiting. The old man let go of Castilia's hand. "My friends, my companions, I present you the slayer of the prince." Castilia was dumbfounded. The other legends didn't seem surprised at this statement. The legend that had brought Castilia to the table took a seat, and another stood up. "My dear legend, I have seen in my visions that you are the one who is destined to kill Prince Nero." Castilia remained silent. Then he sat down, and a third man, not as old as the previous two, now stood as the second sat back down. "I too have had a vision, and it is about someone in the western plains." He paused. Finally, Castilia thought. "He too is destined to play a part in the prince's defeat. He is the one who the prince had wanted," the man said with emphasis on the part of the prince wanted. Now everyone at the table was mute. They wanted to hear what this female legend would say on the matter. "I will do what is asked of me, but how am I supposed to find the other to assist me?" she inquired. The man chuckled to himself. Legend. With what little strength we have left, we marked the beams of the companion you search for with symbols that are on your horse's neck. You will now trust your instincts. He sat back down again. A thin, frail-looking woman stood up and came by the young lady's side. She didn't say a word, but put a hand on Castilia's back and began to walk away from the table. Castilia followed quietly and curiously. The frail woman stopped by the large lake and pointed to it. "What do you see?" she asked. Castilia came by the edge and looked in at the still water. Her eyes were sharp, and they saw a small pack of 6 men on horseback heading to the house in the western plains, followed by a dark raven flying ahead. Castilia understood. The woman had a gray-colored dress, too. Her hair was silver. "You must go now. Let your horse be your guide," she said, with a strong tone, but with a hint of softness. Castilia's horse came slowly up to her. As Castilia was about to head out of the sanctuary, the other legends came up to her. The woman squeezed her hand tight. She looked at her. "Beware, I sense all is not right with the companion, although we are too weak to see it because we are protecting the house. But be swift. We can only use our magic to protect it for only a short while. Now go, and may the elements protect you on your journey." Then Castilia mounted her horse and encouraged it to exit the sanctuary. Some part of her and her animal yearned to stay with the legends. At the fortress, Nero was sitting in his chair in the main hall. Blinken and Rifa entered the room and bowed to their master. "All is in place, my lord. We have sent 6 of your men to take the child away," Blinken said in a confident tone. The prince merely nodded at them. "What about the orbs? Did you get any closer to finding them?" This time, Rifa answered. "My lord, I have discovered that they are hidden in each of the 4 territories. Where the 5th is, I do not know." Prince Nero thought about this and rubbed his chin. "Good work, the both of you. Do you want to know what I have found out?" They nodded eagerly. Nero got up and stretched. "I have discovered that the family has a grave in the back garden and says, 'Here lies my beloved grandfather.' But when I looked into the grave, there was..." He stopped and turned a cold eye upon them. He used hand magic and suddenly pushed his hands out in a shoving motion, which pinned both wizard and witch to the opposite wall. Prince Nero came up to them and continued, "A baby! The child is the firstborn. How could you not have seen or predicted this?" Both tried to talk, but the prince had made this difficult. "My lord, release us! We will tell you all!" Rifa gasped for air. Prince Nero released his hold on the 2 of them, and they fell to the floor with a dull thud. They breathed in deeply. Blinken stood up. "My lord, the legends and wizards put a dark veil over the birth so we could not see it until it was too late." He trailed off. Rifa smoothed out the silk dress she was wearing. It was deep red color. Then she spoke her mind. "Lord, there is hope. They have another son. He is ungifted. He won't know how to use magic and will be easy to kill." Prince Nero wore dark blue robes. He turned on the witch and made a closed fist. She instantly made choking noises as she was being choked, like she was being choked. "I don't want to kill him, you fool. I want him alive. He will bring me the orbs. I want the legend killed. Besides, she is the one who's a threat to me, not the ungifted. He again released his grip on her by opening his hand and closing it to make a fist. "Begone, the both of you," he said sharply. Lincoln hated Reefa, and vice versa. Reefa now, too, got on her feet. She then exited out of the room. Her heart was beating 100 beats a minute. She urged the animal under her to run as fast as he could. She could see the clearing up ahead. As she exited out of the small grove of trees, everything seemed in order. No shapes or movement was out of place. She now trotted the horse into the plains of the west. The people looked friendly enough. She squinted at the houses she passed by. None bore the symbol she was looking for. Castilia didn't let her guard down. Then she spotted a house she hadn't seen before in the distance. That must be it, she told herself. As Castilia was heading that way, she saw a raven flying over the town. They were close. Castilia came to the front door. She got off her animal and looked at the beams of the door. To her surprise, it opened just as she was going to pound at this point on the door. The man in his late 40s and early 50s stood there. He wore simple homespun clothes that looked like his occupation was either a woodsman or a hunter. "May I help you, miss?" he asked politely. Castilia didn't have time for chit-chat, and she pushed her way inside. "Please, I mean you no harm. I need to see your son now. It is important." She spoke. Her hair was down and hiding her letter on her neck. The father drew a good-sized knife. "I will never give my son to a witch so Nero can kill him." Castilia realized that it did seem logical to the father. She held her hands up in surrender. "Listen, I am not a witch. Gross. But if you don't do as I ask, things will end badly," she explained. Just then, the wife entered, and she screamed. Instantly, a young fellow, a year younger than she, came behind the wife. Everyone stood still. "John, put that down, please," the wife said. John didn't move. "Stay back, June. She's a witch." However, June seemed to know something more. She came in front of her husband. She looked at him. "Last night, I had a dream. The voices told me to trust the woman who came to the door. Please, John, do it for me." This seemed to calm him, and he put the large knife down. Then they could hear the villagers screaming and madness outside. Castilia had no choice. She moved to the window. "Darn it! Now listen to me. I need your older son. Where is he?" "Is this him?" she asked in a tone that was rushed. John crossed his arms. He still didn't trust this young woman. June looked at her. "No, we only have one son." Somehow, Castilia knew he was lying and partly telling the truth. Just then, the door burst open. 2 guards forced the family out of the house. A 3rd guard stood looking at the family. "Do you know where a legend is? We know there is one somewhere in this village. If you tell us, we will let you live." The mother began to weep. The young son was silent with great fright. "No, we haven't seen a legend around. Now get off my property," the father said angrily. Just then, one of the 2 guards stabbed him in the chest, and he collapsed dead with a large thud. Now the son, in anger, tried to attack the guard, but the mother pulled him back. It was now the guard's turn. Now the guard turned his attention to Castilia, as if noticing her for the first time. She had a soft, beautiful face. He knelt and examined her. "I haven't seen you here before. Why is that, my pretty?" She now brought her eyes up to him, and as she did, her hair moved to reveal that she was in fact a legend. "Ah, a legend," he said, a little in awe that she was with this family. I'm going to have to kill you now. Goodbye, my pretty. Too bad. Too bad we could not enjoy each other. He drew his sword. He drew a sword to her. He drew a sword to do her in, but then she spoke. Why kill me? Think of how much more valuable I am alive, and the reward Nero will give you when you return with me. The guard thought about this. He smiled. Castilia could tell her plan was working. The soldier put his sword away and helped her to her feet. She smiled at him. Let the ungifted ones go. They are no use to you. He shook his head. The other two men killed the mother anyway. Castilia inside was frustrated. She, however, remained calm. They knocked the boy out and left. As Castilia came close, her horse followed. The horses put a crossbow up to taunt the animal. Castilia put a hand on the soldier's chest. He was clearly pleased. No, if you kill the horse, you kill me, she warned. The guard nodded. The other two withdrew their weapons. She now sprang into action. Under her clothing, she wore a 12-inch short sword. A lightning-fast slash to the middle, and the man lay dead. The other two came at her fiercely. She ducked and weaved and killed one of them, pinned the other to the ground, and slew him without hesitation. She knew the other three would soon come searching for them. She was winded, but forced herself to run back to where the young man was knocked out. He was just coming around when the other three men approached her. Castilia helped the young man to his feet. Before she turned and faced the soldiers, she smiled at them and said in a friendly voice, Listen, gentlemen, I don't have time to play. Maybe next time. They chuckled and drew their weapons. She threw her hands to the side as if she were a bird in flight. Then a great movement of the earth like a wave ripped the ground in front of them. The other three men flew up, then came crashing down. Only one survived. He stumbled backwards as Castilia came near him. Tell your prince that legends live and will not rest until his blood is on my blade, she said, her voice low and hard as steel. The soldier was off in a flash. She slowly made her way back again to the only family member still living. Where his brother was, she did not know. The son had carried his parents inside. Castilia came close and looked at them. I can heal them, she said softly. He was surprised of how sensitive she had become. What? Impossible! But if there's a way, please try. She nodded and closed each parent's eyes. She put a slightly bloodied hand on his father and closed her eyes tight. Her body began to shake rapidly and then stopped. She opened her eyes and gasped for fresh air. A moment later, the father opened his eyes as if he had taken a long nap. He simply understood what she had done. The son was about to speak, but the father silenced him with a wave of his hand. She did the same thing to the mother, and the same result happened. Castilia then collapsed on the floor with exhaustion. She awoke a half hour later. She sat up in a bed, feeling refreshed. She got up and entered the main part of the house. The mother and father were both explaining to their son that she was a legend and how she could do certain things. John saw her and got up. Dear lady, forgive me. You should have said you were a legend beforehand. I feel so guilty. Now go speak. Now I need to speak with you alone, he said. The mother got up and took her son's arm. Come, Leon, help me pick vegetables in the garden. He didn't have time to complain. He did steal a glance at this creature in his home as he walked past her. Now I know you didn't have to bring us back to life, and it cost you a lot of your strength, and for that I truly thank you. Now, a long time ago, when my wife gave birth, she gave birth to twins. Leon is the second child. He glanced into Castilia's eyes for something. Why didn't you tell him? She asked, a little confused. He let out a heavy sigh and continued. We wanted to tell him, but it was hard because Nero wanted her child. She feared that if she told him the whole story, Leon would go after Nero himself, and Nero would easily corrupt him. Castilia tried to see the sense of this. She didn't look at him. Do you think Nero knows this? She asked at last. The father shook his head. I don't see how he could. Just then she spied a raven listening in. Her eyes hardened. She picked up a bowl that was nearby and hurled it at the bird. It flew off in a hurry. The father asked, What was that for? She looked back at him. A spy. She turned the conversation back to his son. Please tell me he has a weapon or some knowledge of fighting. John ran his fingers in his messy hair and replied, He's a hunting guide like me. I gave him a bow and arrows. He's quite skilled with them, but also has a sword I never gave him. He paused, then continued, I too had a dream. It said that you would find it and give it to him when the time was right. Castilia now saw two beautiful swords hanging on the wall. They seemed to call to her. She came and stood by them. June and Leon came back in. Castilia turned to the father. She whispered to him. He nodded and spoke to his son. We need to talk, my boy. Castilia smiled a small smile. I'll be in the garden. She left the house. Castilia found the grave. She knelt and spoke with the grave. In the house, the father and mother had to tell their son the truth now. They started at the beginning. As the story progressed, the son became more and more upset and hurt. He interrupted during some parts of the story and had to be calmed down. Other times, he didn't say anything at all. The whole telling of the tale took up a lot of time until it was time for supper, which June attended to while her husband talked of the events. So I am to go with this lady, but what is my part? Obviously, I can't go. This task wasn't for me. It was for my older brother, Trigger. Castilia entered the house. She had a smile on her face and looked pleased. Your part is to help me, for I am the one to kill the prince, but your job is to find the orbs. Leon was shocked. The orbs of the elements. How am I supposed to find them? He asked as they sat down for the meal of hot soup. Castilia slapped his cheek playfully and said, Your brother will help you. Now let's eat. The words that the legend had spoken to him the evening before perplexed Leon all through the night. How was it possible that his dead older brother was going to help him? He tossed and turned in his sleep. At day's first light, he was gently awakened by his mother shaking him. Come, Leon, get up, and when dressed, come to the kitchen. He could just make out her worn features in the dim light. She left and shut the door. He rubbed sleep from his eyes and did as his mother asked. When he came into the kitchen, he saw his father too was up. He turned from filling a traveling pack for a journey of some sort. Where's the legend? Did she leave already, father? Where's the legend? Did she leave already? Father, are you going somewhere? The father patted his son's back. The legend is speaking with the horses. The pack is for you, son. You have a mission to do. Leon looked at his mother fixing breakfast. Leon then remembered what had happened the day before. He gloomily sat at the table. Just then, the legend came in. She looked like a summer flower in full bloom, bright and beautiful. The clothing which most legends wore were many things. She wore a sleeved white garment that was transparent on the arms. Her pants were dark green with hints of brown. The trousers were unique. Right down the middle of the crotch area was an extra piece of material that was in the shape of a triangle that, when standing, came to her ankles and gave the illusion that she was wearing a skirt. The boots she wore were made of good leather. They came all the way up to her knees. She had her hair tied back with some twine. "Morning, Leon," she said, knowing he was staring at her and not his food. Hot mush fell from his spoon and onto his lap. "Oh, yes. Good morning, Legend." Leon wiped away the mess on his lap. He gulped down 2 more bites and finished his morning meal. Both father and mother were silent as their son stood next to Castilia. "All right, let's go," he said, a little tired, but knowing he had to go. Castilia held up her hands. "Wait just a moment, Hunter. You must get your sword." He looked at her with a sense of doubt in his eyes. He turned as she walked to the wall with the 2 swords. "Do you know the best way to hide something, Hunter?" she asked, looking at Leon, waiting for him to answer her. He came close. "My name is Leon, not Hunter, and I suppose camouflage is the best way." "Why?" This answer seemed to satisfy the legend. "Very smart thinking, Hunter. Now, concentrate on the swords. Do you see anything else on the wall?" she said, again more firmly. Leon looked to his father, but he only nodded encouragingly to him to see something the legend saw. At first, he only saw 2 swords on the wall. He sighed softly in frustration. "I see 2 swords," he said, feeling a little on the spot. Castilia glanced behind him. "Look again and tell me what you see." He again looked at the swords on the wall. Then, as if a veil had been lifted over, he saw, "No, it couldn't be. I see." He paused and looked at the legend in amazement. "I see 3 swords hanging on the wall. How can that be?" Castilia now used her left hand and reached for one of the swords it looked like. She, however, left the weapon on the wall and drew another from the one hanging on the wall. "This, Leon, is how you hide something. You hide it right under their nose." She used both hands to hold it. The weapon was a beautiful blade. The legend handed it to her father. Leon followed the sword with his eyes. "Listen, Leon, this was to be your brother's, but he is now dead. So I ask you, do you want to be Hunter of the Orbs and help me defeat the prince?" Her words were serious and firm. All the feelings he had for his older brother he had never known, and thought of the prince tormenting his family blended into one word for him. "Yes," he said. Castilia looked deep into his green eyes. "If you take this weapon, there's no going back. Understood? You can say no, and I'll find another to do the task." He gripped her arm and looked at her. "I said yes. I need to do this for my family. For Trigger." At this, she lunged at him with a huge hug. He was taken aback and hugged her back. "Kneel, son of John." He did what he was told. Now Castilia drew her sword. I hereby dub you as Hunter of the Orbs of the Elements." As she spoke these words, she brought the sword over his head and both shoulders. When this was over, she put her weapon away. "Rise, Leon of the Western Plains, Hunter of the Orbs." She bowed her head and put both hands together and closed her eyes as respect to his new position. At that moment, as Leon was standing, he was filled with purpose and a strange understanding of it all. Castilia opened her eyes again. John now handed the sword back to her. Now, Leon, you must swear on the blade of your brother that you will complete your task or die trying. Sorry guys, I lost my place. Now, Leon, you must swear on the blade of your brother that you will complete your task or die trying. Leon held out his right hand to the blade. I swear it. In that same motion, cut his hand on the blade. Castilia shook her head and wiped the blood clean with the towel. Hurry now. The prince will know there is another who searches for the orbs. June now handed her son the sword belt and sheath. He was putting it on and was heading out when the sun was barely over the plains. The two got on their horses. John came out and gave his son the backpack. John wanted to say something to him, but couldn't. He looked down. I'm so proud of you, my son. Listen to her. She has seen many a battle in her time. You are a fine man. Good luck, and may the elements protect you both. Leon's mother could not hold back the tears. Leon kissed his mother one last time. Then he looked at Castilia, and they headed off where Leon had no idea. So that's all the chapter for today. Thank you so much for listening. Again, if you are interested in purchasing this book and reading along with me or reading on your own, it can be purchased at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Apple iBooks, and lots of other places books are sold. It is Friday today, so I probably will not be filming on the weekends just because sometimes it just gets busy. So I cannot wait to see you all Monday for chapter 3. Until my next video, bye-bye for now, everybody.